Well, welcome back to another episode of the Bookworm Mom. And today we're going to be talking about another fiction book, a newly released book by Bourhis. It's called Revolt, and it's a small town stand against a broken nation. Ray is from New York originally, was born in Queens, and then went to Ohio State where he graduated. Very interesting fellow. Graduates from Ohio State, becomes a campaign aide or assistant to the then Senator Robert Kennedy on his presidential run.
Okay.
And later he goes on to teach at UC Berkeley. So that probably tells you a little bit about the slant in some of the book. But it was well written. I will say I enjoyed it. I don't want to spoil it, but the premise is he and some others get kind of tired of the way the federal government has sort of been pushing them around, and with taxes and forcing them to pay for their land forever and ever and ever. Because as it is now, we don't own our land. You just rent it from the government, even though you've purchased it. So he decides, okay, let's use the system that we're in to push back. And so they decide to put in an initiative in the little town. Now, this is a fictional town that's located in California, in Southern California. And so they get this initiative on the ballot. Everybody's going to vote to essentially seek independence from the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously, the town mayor is not in support of this. And initially, it was kind of almost a joke. Nobody thought he was serious. And so then as it becomes more obvious that he is serious and he does have some money to back up what he wants to do, he gets a few other former classmates that graduated from the local high school, and they've gone on and had careers and been successful and come back. And so they kind of create this team, if you will. And so that's the good guys against the bad guys, in essence. Will they or won't they? Will it pass or won't it pass? But so a lot of people trying to prevent it from getting on the ballot, and a lot of work to get it onto the ballot so that folks can vote. And then the question is, if you're able to overcome that and get it on the ballot, would people actually support it? So it was very interesting. I'm not going to ruin the ending. I'll let you read it and find out how it does conclude.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, because right now, if you've been paying attention to the news, not even just this weekend, but Alberta, Canada, has been seeking to gain its independence from Canada now for quite a while. They've had several referendums, and they're pushing for a vote to break away. And I understand Saskatchewan is also looking to join them, and there was some talk about, well, what if we both, seceded from Canada, what would we call our new nation? And I saw them throw out Buffalo as a potential name, and I thought, I like that. So we might have a new country to our north called Buffalo.
They've even had a contingent go to from the provinces meet in the White House, and they got assurances that we would recognize them as an independent nation once they broke away.
Right. So, and in the book, the guy talks about, here are the benefits. If we were to break away, we would essentially become like this little island where, you could onshore your money and not have it get taxed by the government. It would become the new Switzerland, if you will. And so lots of interesting play on how that would shape out. I would love to sit down myself and spend a little more time addressing, is this really a possibility? Because, if you go back to the first attempt to have a secession from the United States, obviously we go back to the Civil War, and good old South Carolina, we were the first ones to say, we've had enough of this nonsense, we're out of here.
Yeah.
And the Constitution was written in such a way that you could actually break away from the government. For those people that their heads are going to explode when I say this, but to be fair, we had the right to break away. States had the right to break away, and Abraham Lincoln stopped it. Used a military force to bring it to a resolution where we stayed unified.
Yeah.
So I don't know, if an entire segment of the country or half of the country at that time couldn't break away using military, I don't know how effective a small town voting independent, voting in independence would actually. I mean, I feel like the state or even the federal government would step in and say, yeah, we're not going to let you do that. But anyway, not going to ruin that for you. So I don't know, watching what's happening with Alberta, I mean, it's like, watching this book kind of come to life, because they're pretty much doing that. And then the old joke is, well, does Canada even have a military? I mean, could they send some Mounties out there to put this down? I don't know. And obviously, then that kind of spins into other forms of revolt. And unless you're living under a rock, there's no way you didn't know what happened Friday night, at least by Saturday, over in Iran. We had both the IDF, Israeli forces, as well as the United States went in and started bombing Iran. And there were several people said, oh, this was really a surprise. I thought, well, how could it be a surprise? Donald Trump parked virtually all of our naval vessels over there. So, I mean, when that happens, typically you can expect fireworks.
Yeah.
And, of course, since that time, we've now had confirmation of the death of the Ayatollah, and then he had a replacement, and now we have confirmation of his replacement's death, and the leader of the Iranian IRGC was killed, and then he had a replacement. Now his replacement is dead.
Yeah.
So you kind of joke and say, perhaps stop saying that you are the new leader.
Yes. And another thing that's unsaid, too, is during that military involvement, the Turkish Navy actually was keeping the Gulf of Hormuz open. And people didn't even recognize the Turkish Navy. They only want to put it as the United States and Israel.
Right.
But there were actually 5 countries involved in this operation. But they try to ignore the other 3.
Of course. And, well, it's just like, I'll say this. Someone had posted on X something related to how they knew where the Ayatollah and the commanders were located. And they said, oh, yeah, the CIA. And I was like, I don't think that was the CIA. I mean, listen, I appreciate our intelligence community, but let's be fair. I do not believe that we had deep operatives. The United States had deep operatives in Iran. I think we owe that to Mossad. Let's just be honest. I think the Israelis had some folks in.
And I also think that there might have been, we might have to give a little bit of a nod to the Saudi intelligence groups, too.
Absolutely.
Because they have been secretly going hand in hand with Mossad in the United States on intelligence gathering in there.
I'm not supposed to tell them.
Oh, gosh, yeah, darn it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, Sunni population.
No,
We're not trying to do that.
Sorry, we didn't mean that. But yeah, so it's been interesting to watch that. And as you and I were talking about before we came onto the podcast, that the last time we saw something like this occur in terms of revolution or the feeling or spirit of revolution spreading the way it has was the American Revolution. And of course, you had the French Revolution and multiples of others that took place afterwards. Because right now you have the Iranian people being given an opportunity, and I don't know what they're going to do with that opportunity. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
We don't know. Are they going to get the Shah back? Are they going to have some sort of elected government? Or are they going to get somebody who's as bad as the Ayatollah or worse? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns out there, but I do think that what Trump has given them is an opportunity, and then what they do with it is up to them, and that's as it should be. But what you now are seeing is, I mean, my goodness, I saw on X videos coming out of Cuba with people, speaking to Trump saying, please, you brought liberty to Venezuela with the removal of Maduro, and now you've brought liberty to Iran with the removal of the Ayatollah. So can you please bring liberty to Cuba?
Yeah.
And then down in Brazil, Lula, who Barack Obama said was the most popular leader in the world.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Now they're actually trying to get him out. I mean, I think he's running for his 4th or 5th term now for 2026, the election is. And I think the elections there are much like the elections were in Venezuela. It's a foregone conclusion who's going to win that.
Yeah, a lot of corruption. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to see this revolutionary spirit kind of spreading around the globe.
Yeah.
And that obviously has pros and cons. There are benefits to that. I mean, I was listening to a couple of guys discussing revolution and specifically talking about the French Revolution, because we always, for us, because we're Americans and we, America first, which is nothing wrong with that. Hey, we should think about our country and our country's history first.
Right.
Our American Revolution was, fought against Great Britain, and we won.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the same level of vitriol towards the loyalist. I mean, don't get me wrong. We did tar and feather some folks. And I think for a long time as a kid, I used to think tarring and feathering was basically no worse than somebody puts glue on you and they put they put feathers on you.
Oh, yeah.
But then as I got older and I did the research on that, I was like, oh no, that was really, really painful because they put hot tar, which is not pleasant at all. I mean, take hot wax and multiply by 10, factor of 10. So you're putting a scalding hot liquid on someone's body and then dumping feathers on them. So not a pleasant experience. But even that was not as horrific as the things that you would see having occurred in the French Revolution.
No.
They were beheading people. The guillotine was very readily available. And I was reading another book by Buck Sexton, which we'll cover probably in our next podcast. We'll talk about his latest book that just came out. And he was discussing how at one point in time they were, I think, executing, was it 35 or 36 people a day?
Wow.
And you think, well, that's not that many, but the estimate is somewhere between 16,000 to over 60,000 people they believe were killed during the French Revolution. Not just not just the royal family, if you will, but anybody they deemed to be a loyalist to them.
Yeah.
Or maybe not as a stringent revolutionary as they should have been.
Yep.
One poor princess was, she was beaten, clubbed, and then had her heart ripped out while it was still beating, and then they tore her limb from limb.
It's almost like the Russian Revolution that they did to that royal family.
Exactly. Then they took her limbs and put them in a cannon and fired. It was like, you thought, okay, and now they're done? Nope, now they're going to do more. Yeah. So it's like, desecrating the body after the fact. It's just on and on it goes. And so that to me is really kind of what came to symbolize revolution, not what happened here in America, where I think, and please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it was bloodless, because it certainly wasn't.
No.
People died, but we didn't have, again, I do not believe we had the same vitriolic response to our fellow citizens, or as I said before, loyalists, people loyal to the crown, that you see in other countries, like Russia is another great example, as you noted. I mean, my goodness. And I think sometimes you can have a certain, it's worse. And I think after the monarchy was overthrown in France, there was a long period where it was worse. It was not better. And unquestionably, that can be defined as the case for Russia.
Oh, absolutely.
That led to a long, long string of not good things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the USSR, and even to some degree, remnants of that remain. Yes, of course, that collapsed. But right now, you have Putin, who, he longs for the days of the former Soviet Union.
Well, he was part of the old school KGB, and that's where and why people are surprised that he longs for it at that, and he put most of what they would call oligarchs in power.
Right.
So, And
that's interesting, too, because if you look at it, anytime someone seems to kind of go back and look at a period of history that is, in my opinion, dark, it always seems to be that their memories are very much because they were on the benefiting side. He wasn't the recipient of the KGB snatches off the street and never seen before or never seen again.
Yep.
So that kind of explains why he feels that way. Now, you don't have anything, and this book does not have anything quite so dark or dramatic in it. Again, they're seeking to do it peaceably and through the electoral process of voting. So again, I don't know, and it's a fair question. Okay, what does our Constitution actually allow? Could we have a state or a city seek an initiative where the people vote and say, we no longer want to be a part of the United States of America and we want to break away? I mean, lots and lots of jokes can be written on that because, I know being here from the South, obviously a more conservative segment of the country, many of us, I've made the joke myself that think, California should just go be its own country. Mm-hmm. It's the left-wing part of the world should just go do their own thing. So I don't know if the whole state of California were to get together, I think you would probably have some problems with Southern California. They would be a little some of the folks. It's weird. Southern California has a lot of conservatives in it as well. You just don't think that.
Oh yeah, there are more Republicans in the state of California than any other state in the union.
Right. Yep. But they are, because of gerrymandering.
Yep.
they have been suppressed and their voices are not being heard. Now, I know there are many of them have moved and are moving out of the state. But because of what's happened this past weekend, and if you've turned on your television, there's no way you haven't seen just the plethora of rallies of support for what Trump and Israel have accomplished in Iran by Iranians. Yeah. And I thought it was funny because down in Los Angeles, they had a reporter down there, and initially they thought this was a rally that was in,
in opposition
to what Trump did. And suddenly they realized, oh no, all these people are in favor.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened again. There was a guy, I think he was working for, the female in L.A. was for CNN. And then there was another gentleman, it was either CBS or ABC.
CBS, I believe it was, with the cell phone.
Yeah, they got the text and they said, hey, we don't want you to cover this. And the guy basically said, I don't care, I'm doing it anyway. So good for you. I was like, good for you. That's real journalism. And you have to have that. Because people need to see the honest truth, the honest, unvarnished truth of what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's even, a lot of Iranians who are working in various fields who are Democrats themselves, and they're coming out and telling the Democratic Party, knock it off.
Yeah.
Stop letting your dislike or your hatred of Trump blinds you to the fact that this is a good thing. The removal of the Ayatollah Khamenei is a good thing.
And one of the people that spoke, and I thought this was very interesting because I hadn't thought of that at the time. He said, they said, well, why haven't you spoken out until now? And he said, because before we thought and we know that the Islamic Guard was brought here in the United States looking for people to kill if they spoke out.
Or to send messages back for their family members that may be left behind.
Exactly. And he said, until President Trump started getting them out, we knew that we didn't have a chance. And then even him getting them out, we just weren't sure if he got everybody, but now we are confident that we can, come out and say what we need to say. And the interviewer was slack-jawed, had nothing, They thought they had a gotcha.
Yeah.
Why wait till now? But all of a sudden when they came up with a reason, because we didn't want our families killed, they're like, oh.
Right. And, again, that's happened time and time again. I cannot believe probably like 4 different TV reporters, analysts, whatever you want to call them, talking heads, who have Iranian heritage, who have now come out and said, there's the one girl down in Australia, and I forget the channel, but she does like Lefties Losing It.
Oh, yeah, yes. Kamrai. Oh, shoot. I know her. She's delicious.
Hilarious.
She is so good. Yeah.
But she basically gave a message to the Ayatollah in Persian and or Farsi, whichever you prefer to call it. I won't use the verbiage that she did, but she essentially said, have fun in hell, more or less. She called him a particular name that fits. It was beautiful, but she said it in Persian, so they can't, nobody's going to gig her for making that comment.
Absolutely.
You don't know what she said.
Yeah.
And several others, same thing. This one Iranian female said, listen, I don't understand these left-wing white women running around telling me, shh, stop talking about the terrors that you faced as a child. She said, listen, when I was raised in Iran as a young child, we were told, if you show your hair, you're going to go to jail. And then if you show your hair, you're going to be beaten. And then if you show your hair, you're going to be killed. And then they give an example of a female they'd already killed. And as a young child, can you imagine how frightening that must have been? And so she said, so to have these left-wing white women telling me to be quiet about my own experience is absolutely repulsive.
Yeah.
And it is. And I think that the reverberation of this kickback of the left people saying this stupid stuff, like, be quiet, don't talk about that, because you're going to create, are you ready for this? Islamophobia. Well, phobia is an irrational fear. Right. And as she put it, there was nothing irrational about her fear as a young child because they were going to kill her if she showed her hair or her skin or whatever.
Right.
So that's not an irrational fear. That is an honest to goodness, verifiable fear of death from an extremist Islamic group.
And that culture in 10 years took if you saw a picture of life in Iran in 1965,
Right.
and then you go to
Even 1975.
yeah, and then you go after the revolution, and it is sad.
It really is.
Sad, and not just for the women, for the men too.
Sure.
It was, and it was not a majority of people that wanted an Islamic state.
Right. I think, the highest estimates I've seen is maybe 50% of the population is actually Muslim. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure it's that many. I think it's probably closer to 30%. And then you had a lot of people that were forced into quote unquote conversion. Either convert or die. I know that I've seen numerous postings, telling Trump and the Israelis, Netanyahu, hey, please bomb this mosque, and they'll name it because it's not a mosque anymore. They're using it as a military base of operations since she's blown up the RGC's bases.
But even a majority of the people of the Islamic religion, a majority of them didn't want an Islamic state.
Right.
I mean, they loved their religion. They just didn't want, as many of us.
A caliphate.
A caliphate, exactly. Yeah. And but those radical students that were armed were the ones that were, the ones that created this caliphate from being radicalized by their mullahs.
Yeah, a long time ago, there was a book written, I think it was about 1980, and I know the title of the book, and I can't remember the author's name, so I'm going to look it up real quick. But I read the book while I was actually in Korea, and it was a fascinating read. And at the time that I was reading it, we had in office Mr. Obama. Mm-hmm. And I honestly felt like what the book had said Carter was attempting to do, Barack Obama was able to do. It's called Hostage to Khomeini, however you want to pronounce his name. Yeah. I know there's a particular way. And it was written by a guy by the name of Robert Dreyfuss. Now, I will tell you, it's kind of hard to find the book. I did not pay this much for the book. This particular one is selling for $53. Obviously, it was, as I said, published in the early 80s. So it's a little expensive, but you should read that book, folks. If you want to understand what happened, you should read it. Because one of the things that it talks about is this marriage between Islamism and the left.
Yeah.
And it started with those guys working together. And I should go ahead and tell you that when we talk about the left, let's just be really honest about what the left is. The left is Marxism.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
That's when I refer to the left, I'm talking the Marxists.
Yes,
and then you have the degrees of Marxists. The loose socialists going to the hardcore communists that go through it. Even progressives are in my estimate have Marxism in their blood. But that's what I refer to is the left, because I really don't separate people's political ideology and belief by anything but economy.
Right.
And I know that sounds real hard and harsh for a lot of people to hear, but then again, I am an objectivist light when it comes to those types of distinctions, when I'm trying to find hardcore definitions so I can have good conversations like with you.
Sure.
And we can understand each other. But when people sit there and change the meaning of words, the meaning of definitions,
and
that's
a Marxist tactic to change the definition and the meanings of words. So they talk about in that book, Hostage to Khomeini, they talk about how you have this marriage of Islamism and Marxism together. Mm-hmm. And the Marxists actually, in the book, they discuss how they initially wanted to use the black social plight in America as the club to beat America with, which is where you get the Black Panthers from, and groups like that started to form. But it wasn't successful because they had too much opportunity in America. Yeah. And Black Americans are like, I'm not falling for that. I mean, I don't think so. I can make it. I can get above where I am now just through hard work. Yeah. So it wasn't successful. So then they transitioned to, okay, Islam looks like the way to go. So then Marxism said, hey, let's get married up with this bunch of folks. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen across Europe, where you're having this influx of Islamism into Europe. I mean, the UK, oh my goodness, I can't even believe how that's the plight of the UK to me is just frightening to see.
Oh, and Sweden really makes
Sweden.
People with family in Sweden, they tell me horror stories.
Yeah, the level of crime, in particular rapes, that have gone up like thousands of percent increases. So that's a very obvious connection that can be made, and that's what's happening here in America. You're seeing that very same thing trying to take root here. So it is incredibly important that we push back. Now
getting back to the book Revolt.
Sure.
Describe, without giving up too much, describe some of the pushback that the revolutionaries, the revolters are facing in their plight.
Obviously, they're going to face some of the same things that we're seeing now, where they're going to have propaganda being put out, fake stories being created to paint the revolutionaries as bad guys, the guys, trying to break away. I mean, fake stories and things like that being planted. Like right now, you can go back and think about Russia, all of those things being planted on Trump. And so it does touch on those same types of things. And so it's, as I said, it's an interesting book to read just because of the moment that we're living in.
Yeah.
But the book itself, again, I'm not going to ruin the ending for you and tell you how it ends and tell you what.
You're making me read again.
But yeah, you're going to want to read this book. It's really good. You got to put aside your political whatever because you need to read people from both sides of the aisle to understand the full picture.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now I will say this: he does tip his hat. I don't know if it's tip his hat. It might be more like flip his finger. At our old Bill O'Reilly. He doesn't call him O'Reilly, he calls him Bill Conley. But at the end of the book, he notes that Bill Conley is at his favorite pub, the O'Reilly. So I said, oh, okay, I see what you did there. And let's just say that he did not have a positive view of Mr. O'Reilly. Yeah. But he kind of uses Bill as that example of what I'm talking about, of how you can get information that is not accurate, and then it gets pushed out by a very powerful, a Tucker Carlson, a Candace Owens, whatever. They start putting out stuff that's not true, not verified. And they're not the only ones to do that. Don't get me wrong. It's happened. Many, many people have done it. But, that in itself is a tool of Marxist. They love to put out this information, and it goes back to Pavlov, if you will, with the Russians. Sure. Russian scientists very famous for the tricks with the dogs, where you're ringing the bells and the dogs begin to salivate before the food is there because they've been conditioned.
Yeah, kind of like when I drive by a cigar shop.
Yeah, and then later with Mao takes some of that same techniques that were being used by the KGB in the Soviet Union, and he transforms it, and they take the term that they use in the Maoist country, and it comes out to mean the Chinese to English brainwashing, which is where we get the term brainwashed.
Yep.
So it's very interesting where these terms all come from. But in essence, it's a great book, again, and I think, gosh, you couldn't, and obviously he didn't have a crystal ball to look into the future and see, this is going to be a great time to write a book about revolt. But this is a great time to have written a book about revolt. Now, again, this is it's fiction, so it's not actually occurring. There's not a current town in California seeking to, not that I know of.
That's right.
Caveat there. Not that I know of.
Allegedly.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's a fun book to read, but to me, it's more of a thought-provoking book than you typically find with your fiction stories. Sometimes they're just entertainment, but to me, this one is entertaining and thought-provoking, which is the best kind of book that you can have.
Yeah.
So if you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend picking it up. It's a brand new book out. It's called A Small Town Stand Against a Broken Nation, Revolt, and it is by Ray Bourhis, and you can pick it off Amazon. I'm sure they have it in some bookstores as well. But as always, we'll include a link to where you can purchase that in
our description.
And folks, we could talk all day about what's going on because it's very exciting times that we're living in, but kind of keep it to our regular 30 minutes if we can. So thank you again for tuning in. Next week, we're going to be covering Buck Sexton's book that he has just come out with. And if you don't listen to his podcast, he's former CIA. I mean, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not even going to get into it because then that's a whole other conversation. But thanks so much for taking the time with me.
Absolutely. Everybody tune in to The Bookworm Mom. And if you want more information and background information, just go to libertycrackmedia.com. Thank you and have a good day.